My name is Henry Hamura. I work for a large law firm stationed in downtown Los Angeles. We've overseen some of the biggest, most controversial cases in the last 2 decades and have built quite a name for ourselves. I'm using a pseudonym because, as you will hear, this story is almost fantastical, too frightening to believe real. I don't want to ruin a career I've spent so much time and effort building just because some people don't want to believe the truth of what is out there. First, I just want to issue a warning. Never, ever play Kakura-san. No matter how innocent the internet or books make it sound, don't do it. This is a story of how my life changed forever and how I lost something so dear. Spirit boards come in all shapes and sizes, and various names as well. In the US, the most common one is the Ouija board. They are intended as a children's game, when really, they can unleash something so powerful and evil that it may never be bottled. Spirit boards are just a portal to the other side, a way for spirits to communicate directly with the living, and that spirit can be good or a total evil menace. According to my research, you can use just about anything as a spirit board. In my native country, we played a game called Kakura-san. With this game, you question the spirits about your future, and they will sometimes answer. Maybe not with the answer you're seeking. We would take a coin, place it on a paper with some words and numbers written on it, and the coin would slide across to answer your question. After you were finished, you were supposed to tell Kakura-san to go home and slide the coin over the red Torii symbol at the top of the paper, and then tear the paper into 48 pieces and burn it. Almost 30 years ago, my sibling and I started playing Kakura-san, and did so a dozen times or so before moving to America, without much more than a few funny responses from a fox spirit. The last time we played Kakura-san, my brother asked the spirit,
Kakura-san, will you move this coin?
The coin slid across the paper and repeated circles for a few seconds, then stopped.
Kakura-san, will I become rich and famous?
He asked. The coin slid slowly across the paper. The coin was pressing so hard against the paper that I thought it would tear, but we were barely pressing on it. Something else was doing it. It spelled out F-E-E-D. Then a pause. M-E. From behind us, somewhere in the dark, came a deep, guttural growl, like that of a hungry dog. We didn't own a dog. We knew this was not Kakura-san. It was never described to act like this or be threatening. Something else had come through the game. Running across the room to grab my father's lighter from his desk drawer, he set the paper on fire and dropped it into the sink to burn, then turned on the tap to drown out the flames. I realize his mistake now, something that I wish he would have done, and maybe it could have prevented everything that would come. He forgot to tell Kakura-san to go home before destroying the paper. He left it trapped in our world. A few weeks later, our father transferred his job with a car manufacturer to the US, and we moved to Seattle. At first, adjusting to the culture shock was overwhelming, but we had all taken English language classes in school, and that made it easier. I can remember the day that we went into a toy store, and we were shocked to see that there was a popular, wildly sold board game that was just like Kakura-san, the Ouija board. Our mother forbid us from buying it, saying it would only invite trouble, and she was unaware that we had played Kakura-san numerous times by then. My brother and I managed to sneak over to the store and bought the Ouija board later that week. Katsuro was the most eager to buy it, which was obvious. I asked him why.
Every night since the last time we played Kakura-san, I've had these nightmares. They're too real. Sometimes I think they actually happened to me. In those dreams, I'm lying in bed, and from the corner of my eye, could see a dark shadow beside me. I can hear it taking deep, gasping breaths, and the dripping of saliva, like it's starving. It speaks to me in a growl, demanding that I feed it.
I asked him, "Do you ask what it wants?" He paused for a moment, deep in thought, as we walked down the sidewalk back home.
No, I always wake up and I can't move for a long time. Sometimes, I swear it is standing beside my bed, like it's waiting for me to feed it, or to feed on me.
I could see the fear in his eyes and in his voice. I had no doubt that he was telling the truth. Maybe you're just dreaming, Katsuro. Dreams sometimes seem like they're real, but they're not. They're...
Dreams don't breathe into your ear while you're lying on your back, unable to scream or yell or do anything.
I could only hang my head in shame because I felt terrible for doubting my brother. I wanted to believe him. But who could really believe something so outrageous without seeing it yourself? Katsuro was never one to lie and would practically break his neck to tell the truth. Okay, so what do you want to do with the Ouija board?
I want to speak to it, banish it back to hell, then burn that board. This time, we'll play by the rules. This time, it won't follow us.
He was dead serious and had the bravery of someone far older than 12. Tears were streaming down his cheeks as he clenched his fists. His stride became faster and faster. That happened on Monday. Our parents would be out the following Friday to a dinner with some of Father's executives to welcome him to the USA, and they said they would be out for hours. I was in charge because I was the oldest at 15, and so I had to keep an eye on my siblings. Michiko was 14 at the time, and she was too preoccupied with the wonderment of American television. So Katsuro and I decided to leave her out of the plan. And we also felt like it was a favor to our only sister to leave her out of any chaos that might happen. I could read English well, but my siblings weren't so great. The Ouija board was in English, of course, so I would have to translate because Katsuro couldn't. We unboxed the game, reading the rules aloud. Never play alone. Check. Never play in a graveyard. Check. It made me double think if any were nearby, but I didn't believe there were. Never burn it. This one, Katsuro became frustrated.
Why not?
He cried, bemoaning. I don't know, Katsuro. It doesn't say. They're just the rules. I don't think it'd be a good idea to question them. Never leave the planchette on the board.
Why not?
He asked. I don't know. I suppose it would leave the doorway open. Stop questioning the rules and just listen.
Okay, fine.
Never ask it when you will die. And the last rule.
Don't forget to say goodbye. That's the one we forgot with Kokura-san.
Katsuro reminded me. Thunder was rolling outside, and it sounded remarkably close to the house. Then lightning crashed, casting the whole house in a bright light like a camera flash. Yes, Katsuro, let's not do that again. I put the rolls back into the box and slammed my palms on the table. If you so much as break any of these rules, I will not be to blame if something gets you.
I won't.
Good. Now, let's hurry before... That's when the lights went off. Katsuro flipped the light switch several times with no effect. I remember groaning with indignation and annoyance. What I hadn't noticed then, and what I wish I would have, was that Michiko never asked what happened, or even made a sound about the power going out. We would see why later.
No! Shut off the lights! It's onto our plan!
The fear was growing in his voice. Shut up, Katsuro! It's probably the storm. Get those candles that Mother keeps for emergencies. Hurry! Katsuro fetched the candles with an eagerness I rarely saw in him. He was at a running pace. I couldn't see him, but I heard him rummaging through the cabinets at a frantic pace, followed by the padding of his feet coming back down the hallway.
Got him.
Okay, I hope you didn't break anything, I said as I leered at him. Anyways, let's light them around the table so we can see the board better.
I wish the power was working.
His voice was quaking. I do too, but we have to wait for the power company to fix it. I struck a match, but it went out with an abrupt hiss. I thought that the match was just a dud, so I struck another, and the same thing happened. My annoyance was building at this point. I struck another, and another, and another. All of them snuffed out within a second of being lit. My brother found a stick lighter and tried that as well, but it did the same thing. There was no gust or blowing of the air conditioner that could cause that, since the power was out. Finally, after several attempts, the spirit allowed us to light our candles, as if it were mocking us. We began to play Kakura-san on the Ouija board. Katsuro went to the window by the dining room table and opened it. The ozone smell from the thunderstorm flooded the inside of the house, and the loud rumbling of thunder filled the house. We removed the planchette from the box and placed it at the bottom. After a few moments of hesitation, we both placed our hands on the planchette and started the game.
Kakura-san, Kakura-san, if you're there, please move this blanket.
My brother said, unsure if he was saying the words correctly. He pronounced it more like blanket, but I just shrugged and laughed. In case you haven't seen a Ouija board, a planchette is the triangular piece that players put their hands on, and is used by the spirits to point to the letters and numbers. Within an instant, it began spelling out H-U-N-G-R-Y.
What does it say, Henry?
It says, "It's hungry," I replied, almost crying in fear. I was not sure why I was afraid, but something about the way it jumped straight to its demands was blood-chilling. Did you move it? Did you?
No, I would never do that, Henry. I didn't.
I believed him, and I could feel the tightening grip of fear in my stomach. To the point Katsuro asked,
What do you want to eat?
The planchette moved. It moved with so much force that I remember having trouble keeping my fingers on it, just letting go to see if it would just move on its own. M-E-A-T. I nearly flung my hands off the planchette and ran out of the room. But I reminded myself that I was the older one, and I had to be strong for my little brother. I also wasn't sure what would happen to us if I did let go.
I will find you something.
Katsuro answered, nearly jumping from his chair. He was dashing toward the fridge. No! Don't give it what it wants! You'll make it... Ah! That was all I got out before a searing pain went down my back. A pain so strong that I found it hard to breathe. I fell to the floor, writhing in a sudden, screaming pain. Gasping, I moved my hand under my shirt. I winced as I touched the pained area and saw blood when I looked at it. Katsuro! Look at my back, please! He was digging through the refrigerator by then, almost ignoring me entirely. As he looked desperately for something to offer, he casually looked over his shoulder.
I'll be right there,
he said as he shut the fridge and came running over to me, his little arms carrying wrapped ground beef that he sat on the table. He looked at my back and gasped.
Henry, there are 3 long scratches going all the way down your back. What happened?
It was that spirit. It did that when I told you not to feed it. We're just going to make it stronger, Katsuro. We both made eye contact with the ground beef, but the packages were empty. There was no sign that the package had been cut, torn, or broken in any way whatsoever. Just empty packages. The planchette moved again. this time without us touching it. It moved with a jerky motion, like something didn't quite know what it was doing, or like a jerky movement of computer lag. N-E-X-T. Then it slid to a blank area and back to the board. B-L-O-O-D. Katsuro grabbed the planchette and threw it out the window as hard as his little arms could. When we turned back, it was back on the table, and on the word no. Then it began to spell Y-O-U-R-S. I moved the planchette to the word no, and then goodbye. But then it moved on its own back to the word no, and spelled the next word so fast that I could barely tell what it said. S-I-S-T-E-R. Michiko gave out a terrifying scream so loud that somebody would have called the police if they could have heard her over the storm. Katsuro and I rushed down the hallway to her room at the far right of the hallway. She was lying on her side under the blankets, facing the wall, still screaming. I rolled her over to examine her. Her eyes were shut as if she were in a deep sleep, but her mouth was shrieking in bloody terror. I shook her hard several times, calling her name, trying my best to wake her, but she just kept screaming. Her arms flopped from under the blankets over the side of the bed as I was shaking her, and I saw her wrist was slowly dripping blood onto the carpet. It wasn't slit on the artery or anything life-threatening, but pricked, like with a small knife, and was only bleeding a few drops at a time. I knew first aid, so I wrapped the wound with one of her clean socks from her dresser and told Katsuro we had to end this now. As we were leaving Michiko's room, the temperature in the entire house plummeted, which was unexplained since it was late summer and the air conditioning wasn't working due to the power outage. I noticed that my breath was coming out in a cloud. The lights began to flicker then, and I saw something standing at the end of the hallway. A pitch black figure, about 7 feet tall, nearly as high as the ceiling. It looked like a man, but it had long, skinny claws instead of hands, and a smile filled with pointed teeth. It was gone once the flickering stopped a few moments later. It was showing us what it was, and I knew that it was warning us to continue, or else. Katsuro and I sat down at the table, placed our hands on the board.
What can we do to make you go away?
The planchette moved to no, then goodbye. My brother sighed, but then gave a shriek of terror as he was jerked to the floor and dragged down the hallway by some invisible force. I jumped up, grabbed his hands, pulling with everything I had, but couldn't budge him. It was going straight for his closet. He kept screaming,
No! Please, no! Stop! Just stop!
as he was being forced down the hallway and inside his bedroom closet. From within the closet, I saw yellow eyes and a wide smile staring back at me. I grabbed onto Katsuro's hands, trying my best to stop it. But it was no use. The closet snapped shut with a hard, powerful slam. Katsuro went inside. Out of panic and desperation, I tried to open the closet door. After multiple attempts, the door finally opened. My brother was not inside. Inside, there were piles of styrofoam meat trays. All appeared to have been opened recently. I realized later that Katsuro had been spending his allowance on various kinds of meat for the thing. I also found another kakuri-san paper under some of the trays. I tore it into 48 pieces along with the Ouija board and burned them, and threw the ashes into the wind, thinking maybe that it'd summon him back. It didn't. He did not. It has been nearly 20 years since he went missing, and we filed that missing persons report. My parents assumed that he ran away to go back to Japan, The move had been hard on him, and he expressed his dislike for the move often. As for the meat trays, well, my parents and the police didn't mention the details or ask about it, if they just didn't notice them. For weeks, I searched for my brother, finding no trace of him. Sometimes I would sit in his closet, begging for an answer, but I'd get nothing. My parents grieved a long time, and their marriage dissolved as a result. Mother went back to Japan, while she allowed father to keep us in America, where I finished school and later became a lawyer. My father once convinced me to pay a private investigator to find Katsuro, but as you may guess, they found no trace of him. After I write this, there is a Ouija board on my dining room table. On the table, I also have some cheap ground beef, my brother's favorite toy, and something I have that I didn't 30 years ago. A vast knowledge of how to kill a demon.